gosh, right, there we go. Just waiting for Nina. There she is. Right, okay. Hello, good evening everybody, and welcome to lesson 2 of our series of 10 on portraits. So last week we started by looking at pencil drawing and some pencil drawing techniques, and we were using either freehand if you're better with, or you feel more comfortable with freehand, or using a grid to draw people that are wearing hats. So last week I showed you a drawing that I did of a photograph of Cézanne, and explained how to break down those different shapes and things. So from the other classes I could see that most people were still working on those things. So we're going to carry on working on the pencil drawings, but if you've got the material such as colour pencils, or watercolors even with you, you can try a couple of other things, techniques to help build your understanding of portraits, but also to try a little bit of color as well onto those drawings. The reason I've chosen to perhaps use a bit of watercolor on a pencil drawing is I got the idea from a documentary I saw a little while ago about the artist Turner, who would go out drawing, and then with his pencil drawings he would actually add some watercolor to the top of them. So I've done that with the drawing that I was working on last week, and so I'll show you that in a few minutes. Oh gosh, there's someone else. There's Lucy. So I'll show you that in a few minutes, and I'll just take you through the techniques that we were using to draw last week, and just a little reminder on that sort of thing. And then I've also got these pencils which come out backwards on the screen, yeah, I've got these, they're skin color pencils, but you know, you can easily use your own color pencil set to do them with, but I just happen to have these, so I thought, well, let's have a go with those. They've been sitting there for a while, so I thought I'd have a go. All right, okay, so we're going to go over to the art wall. Right, so you'll remember all of this from last week. So this drawing here was the one that I chose for us to look at with regards to the proportions of the heads and so forth. Let me just see if I can get it moving. Oh, it's locked. There we go. Right. So yeah, so let's see if I can. Yeah, there you go. Right. So yeah, so if you remember, just a little reminder that there's a line down the center and a line directly through the center which passes going horizontally, which passes through the eyes. Okay, so that is marks on this diagram, at least marks the halfway point from the scalp to the chin, and then halfway between that, the bottom of the nose is another line, and then halfway between the nose and the chin is the bottom of the lips, and so on. Okay, so yeah, so that was a really good thing to do, because it helps us to just to get an idea of where all these things should go, so that whilst drawing we can think about those measurements in order to help our drawings be more accurate, even if they're at different angles and so forth. Now if you haven't got that diagram, it is in the chat still, I think, so you can download that. And one of the things we were doing last week, of course, was we were shading this. So we've got some nice shadows on here and some good detail in the eyes that you can use to help practice those techniques. Okay, now we also used this, which was a grid of it's triangles and rectangles, the triangles intersecting the rectangles to help divide those rectangles up. And the idea is that you have your head drawing with this grid on it, or your head photograph with this drawing, with this photograph on it. Hang on, sorry, with this grid with the photograph together, and then you draw this grid and you look for the outlines and everything that go inside of it. Okay, so that is also, I think, in the chat, so you can download that and print it off for yourself as well if you need to. All right, now now I know that some of you in some of the other classes as well may not have done the grid system before for drawing, and it is a really good useful way to learn about the positive and the negative shapes within a drawing. So here's my my drawing, but I've removed some of the sections from it so that you can try out adding in those details yourself so that you can get the hang of it if you've not done it before. All right, so I will go through that again for anyone who's like going, what was this, or missed it last time. Okay, so thanks for that. There's that one gone. Okay, now I put these photographs on last lesson just here because the other idea about when you come to shading is there are obviously lots of different ways of approaching them. So we've got some different techniques on here. I took inspiration a little bit from the blue one down the bottom there, and there's one just above it with a man with a dog where it's mostly scribbling with a pen, although you could do it with a pencil. And then the other one has got a little bit of colour on of the man with the beard. And then down the bottom we've got Rembrandt, who's used lots of cross-hatching to build up the depth within his picture. So lots of ideas there. And then I've just pulled up a few more because what I did this week is I thought, well, we could do some more. So I've found you a few which are very different again. So this one, now I'm sure this is from someone a bit more famous, but I haven't had a chance to look it up. So, but here you can see we've got lots of lines that build up the detail, and some are darker and thicker than others. But we get a sense of how all of these marks, and indeed this could be shading, has been built up. And you get this really lovely sense of light as he looks out from the picture, and you can see some lines are actually curved as well to show the direction of the hair and build up this sense of form and shape within the image to give it a 3D quality. All right, so really different is this one of this man laughing over here. Just realised they're all men actually. I should have found a woman to put on here as well, a few. Let's have a look at this one. Oh, I need to bring it forward a little bit. Take it up to the top. See if that works. Almost. Right, so this one is much more loose, as you can see, and I really like this for its expressive quality. So we've got these almost like scribbly lines on the hair, but one bit that's I noticed is quite interesting, or there's a couple of bits actually. The cheek where he's smiling, you can see there's a really dark line that goes up at an angle, and then the other lines, which are lighter because there's more light hitting that part of the cheek, are going more horizontally. So you've got this kind of almost like sculpted effect where it comes up and then goes across, which is really nice. Gives a really good sense of light. And then these smaller almost like wiggles and scribbles to get the texture of the beard just underneath as well. And then the last one I chose purely because it was very different is this one. Bring that to the front now. Hopefully it's far enough to the front. Let's get it right at the top. Okay, so this one here is very soft, although it does have contrast in it, doesn't it? So there's really dark areas and very light areas, but the edges have not been paid as much attention in contrast to the blue one that we looked at earlier, or even the one we just looked at. So there's much more of a softness to it, almost like it's kind of a fleeting moment or a memory of some sort as well. So there's lots of ideas here for you to experiment with. if you're ready to do that at this stage. Okay, now before I go back over to the desk, I've also got some skin tones here, which I'm going to send to everyone in a few minutes. Let me just see if I can grab it. There we go. There we are. Right, so I think this is from a particular set of pencils, but a lot of these colours, of course, are ones that you would find everywhere. So there's a whole range of different shades and things that you can combine and blend together to create different skin tones on here. With the colour pencils, I think the best way to approach it is to start quite light and then build in darker. And it's the same reason that I talked about with shading last week, in that when we're shading with the pencil, if we do it lightly and then build in gradually with the dark ones, we can make a few mistakes, and we can also refine those mistakes and change things around a little bit as we go. So using the colour pencils, or if you've got them, skin tones, will be perfect for that. Okay, so I'm going to send that over to everyone now, along with a sheet of the drawing that I did last week and a sheet that shows the Cézanne picture for you to print off if you want to and experiment with. So over here is the images that I was working from. I'll just move the drawing of the man out of the way for a minute. So on here we've got this diagram which we were looking at before, and gosh, what have I done with the... I'll have to find that in a minute. I'll put it down. I've always had too many pieces of paper. There he is. Right, so you'll remember this from last week, how I drew the grid out here, and I drew it out here as well, and then transferred those bits over. Let's see if I can get in a bit closer on this. So it's a bit difficult to see in this light, but on here, believe it or not, let me see if I can make it show up a bit better. Not really. On here you can just about see there's a little grid on here of squares, and basically what you're aiming to do is match up the shapes that are on here and add them into the picture over here as well. I will go through that in a bit more detail for anyone who wants to, but essentially you can put your finger down in the spot that you want to work from, find the corresponding spot on your worksheet, which is actually, the lines are really light on here, so it's not a surprise really that you can't see them. And again, you can make a very pale outline of the eye. I'm doing it a little bit darker to make sure that it does show up a bit on here. And one thing I kept mentioning to the class yesterday in Kimbolton is to look for the negative shapes. So for example, this was one I was referring to last time, was this shape around here, this triangle. If you get that shape drawn perfectly, you'll know that this whole area is in the right place, and then it goes the same around here as well. All right, now a couple of people last lesson moved the eye over here a little bit too far, because basically they hadn't really looked as closely at the grid as they should have done. So one thing to hone that in, and I'm just doing this again because I think it's important, is you can fold it and lay it over your picture and then pull it back and check it. You can also use the photo as a marking point to help you work out exactly where those lines are going to be as well. Okay, so I will go through that a little bit more later. Now this one here I have, this is my original one that I drew out before the classes started, and I've started to add some shading into this, and I'm just about to perhaps add a little bit of color to it as well. So I'm going to use some watercolor for it, because watercolor, as you know, is translucent, so we can paint over the top of this and add some skin colors to it if you want to. Although I started with just using blue on the drawing that I had last week, so I'm going to show you that. Drawing of man. There's the drawing that I did of this fellow just here, and you can see how I've used the lines directionally to get the curves of the face when we did that lesson last week. Now I've painted over this drawing, and I'll bring him on now like that. So down here, look, is how I started. So I started by just using a blue and painted everything. That's why the whole thing has this kind of cold feel to it, because I've literally been using blue underneath as my underlayer to work out where all the tones and shadows are going to go, and then I've started to work over the top using a bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of let's see if I can read it, Alizarian crimson I think it is, as well as some ultramarine blue to make these different skin tones. And you need to sort of, as you can see I did down here, is just sort of practice to see if I get the right one. So that was the thing you can do with this next, is work over. And we don't have to do that today because we'll probably do a bit more on that next week. And here are my colour pencils here. So they're Giotto ones. They came out all backwards on the other screen, but so what I'd start doing is choose one of the lighter ones. Ideally I would have a colour version of this, but I'm thinking more in terms of let's practice with the pencils and shade and things like that as well, but with a bit of colour. So essentially you could choose a lighter colour, and these colours don't have names, they're just called skin tones here. We've got a darker one and maybe a mid-tone sort of colour, a bit of a warmer one. So something like this, a light one, a mid-tone and a dark one, to start working into the drawing. Okay, so it's a bit similar to the watercolour, which is why I mentioned it today, in that we're going to start light and then build in dark with the shading as well. I'll do a little bit of watercolour on here in a bit, but I'm just going to talk about, I'm just going to do a little bit of work on him. It's just there. Okay, so I've got my pencil here, and you need to have this in front of you as well, and I'm going to use a little bit of line. So I'm thinking again about my portrait that I looked at last week with the lines on it. So that was the blue one. If you just want to shade it, that's absolutely fine as well. So the idea is that you're going to reveal steadily the portrait of your model or your photo. Not worrying too much about getting the perfect skin colour, but more worrying about, let's build up some tone with a few different colours. Indeed, you could, what you could do is you could say, right, well, I'm not going to do any skin tone then, I'm just going to use a colour instead, which would equally be good for this exercise, but just thought it'd be fun to get these skin tone pencils out and have a little play with them. So with this, when you're doing the colour pencil, The thing you want to sort of think about is where the lightest areas are, and try not to shade as much on those light areas, but just look for where the dark tones and the mid tones are with your light pencil, and then you get your darker pencil in a bit. So here's my darker one, and you work directly over the top of some of your shading in order to build into that tone. So very similar to pencil, in that with a pencil you build up the shadows, starting light and then going darker again. I'm going to go in here, in this eye. One thing I did notice from a few people too is that some people aren't shading in their eyes dark enough. To really make those eyes stand out, you want to go nice and dark, even in that iris area. And then here, where there's shadow, because this pupil, or sorry, the whites of the eyes aren't just white because of the shadow that is cast over them. And you can see it's already starting to come forward a little bit on there as well, isn't it? So it's starting to work a bit, just using these two colours, a lighter one and a darker one. So we can get the mid-tones in. So this one's a little bit warmer. I'm going to put my hand in the way, you can see it a bit better, can't you? But so by just building it up gradually, it allows you time to look more closely at those details and start to make it as close as you can to how this person looks. And being able to take your time makes it, I think, a bit more fun. Okay, alrighty. So I've sent you the skin tone chart because I know that often people are very interested in what colours you use for different, for skin. We'll look at that a bit more later. But I hope that makes sense to everybody. So tonight's task is to experiment with the colour pencils like this. If you've not got that far, or if you've just joined and you're still doing it, you could work on, it's not very accurate, but you could work on doing this using the grid. And if you've got watercolour and you just want to have a go at watercolouring El Chapo, you could do that as well. Okay, so I hope everyone's happy with that. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer or help with? It's very quiet. Is everybody all right? My microphone's working, isn't it? Hang on, I'm really hot. I'm just going to take my jumper off. My studio gets really warm when because I've had the heater on all day. I've been out here doing various things. Oh, it's better. I'm sweating. Let's switch it off. So I'll. There we go. So does everyone have some colour pencils to use this evening? Magic. If you haven't got your watercolours, don't worry, I didn't actually plan to do that in this lesson in particular. I don't think I wrote it on the email. So if you haven't got watercolours, that's absolutely fine. That's what we'll do next week. So we're tinting our drawings next week. Okie dokie. So I might carry on with this for a minute, and then I'll do a little bit more on that side. Incidentally, with this portrait, with this side of his head, which I've done with a pencil, I used a 4B pencil on here. All right, And if you look at this drawing over here, you can see how dark it is. I did darken it probably slightly on the computer, but it really does go a lot darker. That's a 6B pencil. That's a 4B. And if you've used both pencils, you'll see a difference straight away in that the marks on a 4B pencil are still going to be quite sharp in comparison to the 6B pencil, which I think is quite interesting. It allows you to do more hatching and things, I suppose, in a way, or more crisper hatching, whereas the other one, it softens quite quickly, or it feels softer. I like the 6B. Okay. Okay, lovely. So, yeah, so this time a little bit of experimenting then with the skin tone pencils, the Giotto ones that I just talked about a few minutes ago. So remember, just 3 different colours, a darkish one, a mid-tone one, and a lighter one if you've got them. You don't have to use skin tones, you can use colour pencils and do like a bluey sort of portrait if you prefer to, but just enjoy it and have a little bit of fun. Using a limited range of colours certainly allows you just to sort of relax a little bit, I suppose, without having to worry about mixing colours too much, because you've already got kind of a limited range of colours straight away on there. So just get stuck in and enjoy the whole process. So at this point I just slowed everything down so that you could just see me working a little bit more. It's something I don't very often do, but yeah, there you go. So I'm doing lots of very small cross hatches, gradually building it up and making sure they're kind of directional lines as well. Well, they're definitely directional lines that help you to form the shape of the image. In other words, help you to form the contours of the face. So it's almost like just contouring with a touch of colour blending as well. So when we say contouring, it's about making the shapes on the face curve as they should do, and giving them that form that we're looking for. In other words, creating those curves and helping us to create the 3D effect. It's quite nice, isn't it, listening to the pencil strokes on the paper. So I suggested earlier starting off with a lighter colour first of all, which I've done, as you can see, and then building in with the darker ones. But you'll see as I progress I switch between those pencils a lot more frequently in order to just have a bit more flexibility, and I kind of just usually forget about those sorts of things, just get stuck in.
So with pencils, it's light to dark, is it?
I think so, because if you start that way, you're more likely to be able to leave those lighter areas on your paper, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. and as I mentioned, it's a good way to sort of build it up gradually as well. That said, you know, different artists or people might do it differently, but that's okay. Alrighty, so from there we start to zoom forward a little bit. So we're off again. It's quite nice to get in a little bit closer in this one. So you can see I'm starting to really pile in with the darker tones now. Still using like a hatching technique. The hatching, I was thinking, you know, kind of if you're working with multiple hatches and they're overlapping each other, it creates kind of almost like a bit of rhythm in the way that you're working, because you're constantly touching the paper and doing the hatches, so it kind of gets you moving a little bit in a way. You could argue that that's the same with any sort of shading or drawing, but I find it gives me this rhythm and movement to keep me going. So at this stage I was, because the drawing's the same size as the photograph, you can put the drawing on top, and I spotted a few like little things that I could adjust, including the shape of the eye just then. By putting the paper over the top of your drawing and flicking it backwards and forwards, you can see what the differences are quite quickly. Another way to spot those differences is to take a photograph or look at your image drawing in a photograph on a small screen, and that way you can sort of spot things when your image is smaller, because it forces you to back away, almost like that thing that artists do. You commonly might expect them to do is to make a brush stroke or something and then step away from the canvas to regard it and work out if it's working correctly or not. So it's a bit like that, but with a mobile phone. Modern way of doing it. So you can see it's starting to take shape. It's certainly a lot of fun. So when I'm doing some of the lighter areas of the skin, I'm using slightly finer marks, whereas in the beard I'm using these much smaller, deliberate marks like hatches and things like that, to get that texture of the beard, the hair on the beard. Oh, that was one of my linos I was just showing everybody. Doing a lino print class soon. Oh, there's my lovely wife. Doing a lino print class soon as well at Chester House, which is not far from Wellingborough near Chester, on the 21st of February. A little plug there. It's a whole day with lunch. Anyway, back to the drawing. So the amazing thing is that when you're drawing something like this, you are, you're not just drawing it and that's it, it's done. You're constantly learning about what you can see in front of you. You're diving into those details and those shapes, and you notice shapes that, or shapes or details that you perhaps wouldn't have noticed normally by doing your drawing. So it really teaches you to look. And this is something that David Hockney always talks about, of course, is how drawing gets you to slow down, gets you to really observe the world and its absolute beauty. So here we're looking at the lovely details of our portrait of this man, who is Cézanne. Portrait of Cézanne photograph. Obviously a made up one, but I'll go for that. There we go. So in a second you'll see me add a little bit of watercolour to the other side. As I've mentioned in this lesson and I've shown, is that you can tint your drawings as well with watercolour, a bit like Turner would have done with his sketchbooks when he was out and about drawing. So I do a little bit of that before the end. Whether I've got it on film here is another thing, but it doesn't matter. That's the thing we'll be doing in the next lesson. Oh yeah, I'm just adding a bit of deeper tone with the 6B over the top of the 4B. There we go, a little bit of watercolour on top of pencil drawing. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed today's lesson and I will see you very soon in our next one. Take care.